everyone. In this video, we will look at strings in Python. So, understand the first basic question: what are strings? Strings are nothing but a set of characters or a set of symbols that are bunched in together. So, when we actually write a particular sentence in English, that would be considered a string in Python. So, if I say that, let's say if you're talking about something, and usually when we write it in English, we are going to, let's say if somebody named Sam is actually telling to his friend how he has done a particular activity, and let's say we are actually noting down this conversation, and we usually write those whatever was said in quotations. That is exactly or precisely what is a string in Python. So in this video we will look at how we can create a string, how do what is the meaning of those terms indexing and slicing, and what are the inbuilt attributes and the methods or properties that are available to us in Python for doing any kind of data correction or data manipulation inside Python. So let's jump to a Jupyter notebook and let's see what exactly are these things and how can we perform them in Python. So switching to my Jupyter notebook. Now, the first question, how can we create a string? Strings can be created in the similar fashion of what I mentioned about writing the whatever sentence was there in quotation marks. So you can use simple apostrophes to create a particular string. So let's say if I have a variable called my string, and in this variable I mention the string as, let's say, my name is John. Let's say this is the string that I'm interested in creating. The way we can actually check whether this was created as a string or not is by using the type method. So if I mention type of my string, and if I run this, we can see that Python has given the output as str, and str is short for string. Okay, now let's say if I want to create another string, but this time I want to write something like he isn't asking for help. So let's try to do that. So this time I'll mention the variable as, let's say, my string 2, and like I mentioned, we'll start writing it out. So he isn't asking for help. But now there's something weird that is happening. Like here we can see that when we had declared this variable my string, the entire sentence was highlighted and was within the quote marks. Okay, but now when we write my string 2, we can see that as soon as we write this word isn't, which has an apostrophe, Python stops recognizing the other alphabets after this apostrophe. So this T and asking for help are not part of the string. So the way we can check this is, suppose if I run this, then Python is going to throw a syntax error saying that there is an invalid syntax. That is, Python is not able to understand that isn't has an apostrophe and this entire sentence is part of that particular string. So now how do we actually create the string without getting this kind of error? The way we do that is we can actually, instead of covering the entire sentence with single quotes, we can cover the entire sentence with double quotes and use the single quote for this word isn't. What I mean by that is, let's say I copy this out and let's say we want to create. But this time, instead of having single quotes in the outer layer, I'm going to use the double quotes. Similarly, I'm going to enclose this entire thing in double quotes. Now you can see the entire thing is highlighted in red. Okay, and Python is not complaining anymore. Now if we run this, Python will simply accept it as the next variable, and this variable was defined successfully. So this is how you can actually skip this problem of not recognizing the sentence if we are using the single quotes. Now, I could have done the other way around as well. Now, let's say if I create another variable called myString3, and this time let's copy this entire sentence again. And this time, what I do is I actually enclose this entire thing in single quotes. But for isn't, instead of a single quote, I go for a double quote. Even this is also acceptable inside Python. Although it looks a bit weird, but this is acceptable coding in Python, and Python will accept it. What you have to understand here is the fact that you have to give some kind of indication that the sentence has not been completed yet. So generally what people do is, because we have a habit of writing this kind of words in single quotations in English, we continue typing it out in English the way we are used to writing it in other formats. And we enclose this entire thing in double quotes. So preferably I prefer this particular line of code because obviously I'm used to writing isn't this way, and I enclose this entire sentence in double quotes, but it is up to you. You can use either single quotes or double quotes, but always make sure that Python understands that the sentence is not over yet. Okay, now that we have created the variables, next thing that we will see is how can we access individual parts of a string. But before that, let me show you an interesting thing. So let's say my string 2 is there. Now, if we actually print this particular statement, so if I say print my string 2, you can see that Python has printed this entire thing as it is. Similarly, if I write print my string 3, Python is going to print out the particular string for us. Now, coming back to this question of how do we access individual parts of a particular string. So let's say we have this my string 2, and I'm going to show this sentence to you. He isn't asking for help. Now let's say I just want to grab the first element of this particular string. The first element being H. Suppose I want to grab only this particular alphabet H from this entire string. So how do we do it? We can simply do that by taking the help of the square brackets. So inside the square brackets, I'm going to, because I need the first element, I'll simply mention 0 because Python is 0 indexing and every element will start from 0 inside Python. So if we write my string of 0 inside the square braces, then we'll get the first alphabet. Now, what if I want more than one alphabet? So let's say I want to capture the first 8 elements. So by first 8 elements, I mean the two words he isn't. Now you might say that these are not exactly 8. That is, you might be counting it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even if you count the first of is 6 and 7. So how come these are 8? So inside the string, you also have to count the space. That also is counted as one of the elements. Okay, so if we take the space into account, we have the 8 elements as he isn't. And I can prove that by saying my string 2, and because we want the first 8 elements, I'm going to say 0 to 8, and Python is going to give us this, he isn't. We need to write 0 to 8 because Python will travel from 0 all to till the point it reaches the 7th element. It will not take 8 into account. But because we want 8 elements, we have to write 8. Okay, so this is how we can capture a particular part of the entire string, or what we call as slicing of a string. That is, we have actually captured a particular slice of the entire string. So he isn't is a small slice from this entire string. So this is what is known as slicing. Okay. Now let's say I want to capture the last element. So by last element I mean this letter P. So there are two ways of capturing this last element. One is I go on calculating what the exact place is. That is, let's say, to make my life easier, if I use the len command and if I say len of my string 2, it will tell me it has 24 letters. So if I say my string 2 of 24, and if I run this, okay, because it's zero indexing, we have to write 23. Okay, so it is going to give me this letter P. But what if I don't want to use the len command? So the easiest way to get the last letter is we have something as the negative indexing inside the strings. So I can simply say my string 2 of -1. If I say -1, what we're telling Python is capture the last element, that is P. Okay. So this is the way you can capture the entire string, or the last part of the entire of the string, without actually counting the number of elements that are present. Okay, now if you take a look at this particular error that we had, that is when I typed in my string 2 of 24 and I ran, it said in string index out of range. We had an index error. So this happens because whatever index we mention should be present in the range. Okay, so now the other way of looking at it is, that is other problem that you might face is, if we type some, instead of some whole number we take in some decimal place. So let's say if I simply mention 4.5, okay, we have the element 4, so if I add another, and if I say my string of 4, I'm getting S, and if I say my string 2 of 5, I get the next element, that is N. But if we say 4.5, if I run this, then Python will not understand it, because the way Python functions here is it wants integers, and only using the integers it will be able to capture that particular string. Okay, because this is the string that we are working with. So we can only capture a certain alphabet or word or words, but we cannot give it something like 4.5. Okay, we cannot give it a decimal because Python will never understand that. Now,